everybody. My name is Demira Virgil, and I am your host for Queenduhm Conversations podcast. Today, we have an amazing topic. It is about generational trauma, and our guest is Kimberly Nelms. I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly so that she can just give us some information about her, and then we'll get into our conversations, ladies.
Hi. First, I just want to thank you for having me on. It's such a pleasure.
You're welcome. You're
So,
welcome.
I'm Kimberly Nelms, podcast host, speaker, author, minister.
Mm.
I have a passion for helping people who have experienced trauma, which is pretty much anybody. It just depends on the level. There are different levels, but I just have a heart for helping those people to overcome, to be healed, and to be delivered.
So let me ask you this, Kimberly. Is there anything happened within your life or within your journey that kind of led you on this path?
Absolutely. So I'll start by saying this. I had a wonderful childhood. It wasn't perfect, but I don't really have any, I don't have too many complaints. However, we all do experience things that can affect us, and we don't really realize it until we're older. So one of the things is I was raised by my grandmother because my mom had a mental illness. So she didn't raise me and my sister. And thank God for my grandmother because who knows where we would have ended up, but I'm grateful for her being able to take us in and to raise us. And however, I was able to communicate with my mom. I saw her on numerous occasions. However, because of the mental illness, that relationship that moms and daughters have, I didn't have. As a little girl growing up, that's a very important relationship. So when you don't have that, it will affect you in different ways. And like I said, you don't normally realize it until you're older that these things have caused little trauma.
Wow. So that's interesting that you say that because my mother struggled with mental illness and she would drink a lot. And growing up, I was the only child on my mother's side. She didn't have my brother until I was about 17 or 18. So it was just me. And growing up, I would go to other family members' houses, my cousins, and there were two parents in the household. And there was some stability there. And I would just see the way they lived their life, even friends. And I just always felt like life was so different for me because I couldn't experience those things. And I knew that my mother, she loved me the best she could. She loved me the only way she knew how. But there was still a disconnect there because there were times when I felt like life was just not fair because of the situation that I was in. I felt like I was the adult and like she was
Mm.
a child a lot of times because I was, yeah, because she couldn't read. And so I had to take care of a lot of different things for her at a very young age. And so I think when I look back on my childhood traumas, that's part of it is I just don't think that I experienced that connection with her,
Yeah.
just having peace in the house. So I do understand what you're talking about. Do you think that there are a lot of people, even in their ages of 30, 40, or 50 sometimes, don't really realize that the things that are triggering them as far as relationships, the way they communicate, the way they love, do you think that they don't connect that with things they've been through, especially in their younger years?
Absolutely. I definitely feel that. And it's for myself as well. My grandmother taught us to be strong, independent, do what you got to do to survive and not depend on anyone else. And when you have that mindset, romantic relationships, marriage, those things, it's hard to come out of that mindset to a we're partners, we're going to be joined, we're going to do this thing together. That was one of the things that I struggled with and had to learn and didn't realize I had to learn because I was so used to doing things on my own. Even as a single mom, I was a single mom for years and raised my son. His father helped here and there, but I was the stable parent. I was the one that he lived with. So I was the main parent that he depended on. And being a single mother, you also have to take on that independent role and you're paying all the bills in the house and you're taking care of everything by yourself. It definitely helped me to realize once I did pinpoint the things that caused those behaviors and how I dealt with things that stem back to my childhood.
There are some women who are going to watch this. They may be caretakers for younger women who their mothers, they may have not been there. They want to be, but they just have different addictions. Or they could be mentors within a community or even church leaders, and they have conversations with women they care about, younger girls. What are some things what are some conversations you think these women can have with the younger girls? Because there's some times where you just don't know what to say, especially if you didn't really live in that type of environment to where you had your parents with you and you want to help and then you love them and you want to mentor them and guide them. It could be your niece, could be anybody, but sometimes you just have those moments where you just don't know what to say. So from your point of view, what are some things they can say to women who are going through this experience now in their younger years?
Yeah. I think the main thing is to get educated, because when you don't understand what's going on, it's hard to have compassion. Because as a child, I knew, okay, mental illness, but it was such a stigma on that in the African American community, where there are people crazy, and it was a negative thing. So for one, I was fearful because I didn't know a lot about it. I was young. And I think as I got older, just learning more about her sickness, learning why she did the things that she did, learning how she was not able to have that relationship with us, I think that helped me to understand later. But later on in life, sometimes it's too late. So I think that they need to first and foremost understand what the issue is. Like you said, yours was she was alcoholic and then had a mental illness as well. Learning about alcoholism, because it's a disease. Like, it's not something that people choose. It's an actual disease. And learning this stuff and just knowing about it, you'll know how to deal with it. I think it'll help you cope with it better. And also reach out, get help, go to your guidance counselors in school. They're there. They have social workers in some schools. Reach out to different resources and just get the support that you need in the education.
Let me ask you this. Growing up, when I had questions, sometimes you have questions when you're going through things, and it's okay, so why my mom? Or it could be your father, could be your auntie, could be your grandma, could be anybody, just someone you love in your family. And I can see 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, maybe, but when you hit maybe like junior high school, and I have these questions because sometimes my mom wasn't there. Sometimes she was in facilities at times. She was not able to function and just take care of herself. And there were times when I had questions and I walk in a room and they're talking and then they get quiet. They don't want to have conversations around me because I'm a kid. And this
Yeah.
is just me. This is just my point of view, ladies. But Queendom Conversations is a place where I'm very transparent and I just say how I feel. Now, this is just my point of view. When questions were not answered for me when I was younger and the truth was not really revealed to me as I got older, I felt like that made it harder on me because I didn't understand. There were times when I felt like it was me. Maybe it's something I'm doing because it seemed like when I come
Mm.
around, she just has a hard time and I don't understand why. And I feel like if there would have been some honest conversations when I was younger, even if they broke it down in fragments,
Yeah.
in increments, just some type of truth to help me understand that it wasn't me and that my mom just had some issues going on, things that she had to deal with, that it would have been easier. So did your grandmother have those type of conversations with you to where she just explained that it's not your fault, it's not you, but your mom has mental illness and this is what that is? Or you just had to, as you got older, it was like you just figured it out?
Yeah. Those, I agree with you. I feel that in our time, they didn't really talk to young adults, teenagers on a certain level. They kids and adults. It was just those two groups. When you're a teen coming into adulthood, you have a better understanding. So I think that they need to have these conversations and find ways to be transparent as possible and to explain those things, because when you don't do that, they form their own thoughts, they form their own reasons, they form all these things, their own theory. Oh, well, I'm a bad child and I'm not loved and I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of this. And it's I was a bad, just anything that the enemy is going to bring to you, because he's going to take that opportunity to feed you lies. So when you're taught the truth, as the Bible says, you shall know the truth and it shall make you free. It will help you. It will help you to understand. It will help you not to have this negative thought pattern and come up with this negative theory that people often are going to do when they're not told the truth. So I think it's very important that as adults, guardians, because it may not be the parents, that you try to have those honest conversations with kids, especially when they reach 10 and up. I do feel like they need to really have that, just know the truth, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it.
And I agree 100%. What about your junior high slash high school years? Was it a little different because you're getting older and you're starting to have your own friendships, your own relationships, did life look different where it wasn't just so much as you asking questions about why? Did it change? Did it shift for you then?
I think I never really asked why. I
Mm.
was with me, I feel like I kept a lot of things in. I kept a lot of emotions and feelings bottled up. I felt as if being vulnerable was not good. I didn't allow people to see me vulnerable a lot of times until I got older. I just stuffed down negative energy, negative feelings, all those things, emotions, and it just wasn't healthy. As I know now, I didn't know that then. I thought that being vulnerable was a bad thing.
Mm.
So I didn't even express a lot of times how certain things made me feel, my questions about certain things, or if I was confused about certain things. I just didn't. Who knows? Maybe if I would have, then they would have made it a little harder to just kind of explain things to us and just except for saying your mom's sick, whatever. I'm like, okay. And like people see that doesn't mean I don't understand how that's the only answer. So I just think that I could have maybe been more vocal about my feelings and how I felt, and then maybe I would have got more answers.
What happened to make you want to shift and just do something different and not be in that mindset anymore?
As I got older and started being in like romantic relationships, and even with the opposite sex, I would not always express how I felt, or I felt like I could not express how I felt. I thought that it was negative. Okay, something is always wrong, or it's always something. I didn't want to always have what I felt was problems. And they weren't problems, but I should have been free to express my opinions and my feelings and my emotions in a safe place. And I just never did.
You said a few things, and the reason why I brought you on this platform is because I think that there needs to be more conversation about generational trauma and generational curses and things you can do to break it. If we continually just keep going through generation and then we don't have these conversations, then how do you ever get better? But I think that one of the points that you talked about being vulnerable, people would consider me to be a alpha female. Right? Some people don't believe in it, some people do, but a lot of people they would consider me to be a alpha female. And when I was younger, I was just like you. It was very difficult for me to be vulnerable because I've been through so much. I felt like being vulnerable was showing that I was weak. To cry in front of somebody,
Ooh,
I felt like
yes.
I was weak. To express my feelings when I was hurt, I felt like I was being weak because I'm letting people know about my
Hmm.
emotions, about how I feel. And so now they have a handle on me because they know my triggers. And so I
Hmm.
was very guarded. And so one day I just made an executive decision that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life like that,
Yeah.
because you can drive yourself crazy, literally, mentally overthinking things and not wanting to express yourself, but not because you're scared of what people gonna think. You just want to keep the peace. You don't want to bother nobody. You don't want to be a hindrance. They gonna think you asking too many questions. This is a stupid question.
Hmm.
Like the list goes on and on. So I think that's really important when you stated that it was hard for you to have conversations just in your romantic relationships, even in friendships, even with family. It's just like you just don't want to bother anybody. So, what are some things you did to help you change that mindset and those patterns?
I think that as I got older and had different types of relationships that were actually healthy, I was able to have those conversations. I was able to express my emotions without someone getting upset or it making them, what's wrong? It's always something. What is it now? I was able to express my emotions and just basically tell how I feel. And from that point forward, I just decided I should be able to do this. There's nothing wrong with doing this. And I just had to get to that mindset. And unfortunately it took a couple of bad relationships for me to come to that realization. However, I did, and I'm glad that I did. And in doing that, that's what prompted me to write my book, because my book is basically just discussing things that people experience, whether it be trauma, obstacles, anything that has the ability to set us back and to have us stagnant, hinder us from reaching our purpose, things like that. And that can be anything. That can be a mindset, that can be trauma, that can be a person, that can be family, that can be, the list goes on and on. And the first step I feel like is realizing. So I had to have an epiphany, like, oh my gosh, like I gotta do something about this. This is not healthy, and I'm not being able to prosper in my life because of it.
Mm.
So I think that the book one was a source of healing, and finding my relationship with God was a major one that kind of helped me to free myself from some of those things.
Oh, wow. So I guess a question for the ladies watching this podcast. She was saying that sometimes we don't want to hold ourselves accountable, right? Sometimes when you're having issues with everybody around you, sometimes it's not just everybody else, sometimes it is you. And I think sometimes we struggle with being honest with ourselves because we don't want to take accountability for our responsibility in like certain situations. And what's wrong with taking accountability? What's wrong with sitting down and having a conversation with yourself and saying, you know what? These patterns, these men that I'm dating, I'm attracting these type of men. What is it about me that I'm attracting these men? What is it about me that I'm arguing with everybody? What is it about me that I can't get along with anybody or I can't trust
Yeah.
anybody, especially when they're trying to be good to me? Like, what is it
Yeah.
about me? Sometimes, ladies, you have to ask yourself because that's where growth comes in, right? If you continually doing the same thing, same conversation, same thought process, just the same thing over and over again, and it's everybody else's fault except yours, how are you going to grow and then transition into something greater? So that's something to think about. I am not perfect. I say that all the time, every day. I struggle to learn something and I try to be a better person. If I'm wrong, I'm going to tell you I'm wrong, and I know how to apologize. There's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with saying, you know what, I'm gonna be accountable for what I did and I'm sorry. And then let's move forward. But you have to start having those honest conversations, ladies. When you talk to women, Kimberly, what are some of the main things that stops them from growing and from getting them out of these type of mindsets? What are some of the things that they struggle with?
I think that for the first, the main thing is things that we have not dealt with internally. And what you said was major accountability. Like you have to take a look and say, okay, what is going on with me? Why is this happening? Because it's never one sided. It takes it's always yourself and then the other person. We all play a part in it. So like you said, we have to take accountability. And sometimes you just gotta say, okay, God, show me.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a lot because he will do that. And you just
Mm-hmm.
have to be ready to receive that. But in doing that, you can work on it. He will help you pray. You get the help that you need to be delivered in those areas that you're lacking or that you may need help with. That's everybody because, like you said, none of us are perfect, but we do play a part in a lot of things. We allow certain things, we see things, and then we still deal with it anyway. Like we have to be determined to number one, look inside, figure out what are we dealing with, what are we struggling with, what is causing this domino effect. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times that is accountability. And doing that is hard as well because I had to do that. And still you have to do it every day because we're constantly changing. We're humans. We never have it all figured out. So it's a continual process. Just finding those areas where you need healing and deliverance, I think is the first step.
Let me ask you this. Now, your relationship with God, I'm sure it was different when you were younger versus now.
Mhm.
So, we have some women who are going to watch this and they want a relationship with God. And some women feel like they have a close relationship with God, and some women they don't know. So, can you explain what life was like when you were not as connected to God, maybe when you were younger, versus what it's like now, especially when it comes to going through different type of situations? So, can you explain to ladies, because sometimes they just need to hear what is life like when I don't have God there versus what is life like when I know God's voice.
Yeah. Man, major. I'm like, I wish I had known him a lot sooner because a lot of the things that I went through, while I may not have avoided them, having him to walk me through it is a major difference. For one, I'll say faith. When you connect with God, and everybody's relationship with God looks different. He just wants you to just first believe that He is and that He died on the cross for you, and then you can be saved. But a lot of people feel like I got to be perfect before I come. I got to have this together. I got to have that together. It'll never happen, and that's what I thought. I'm like, oh my God, I'm still doing this, or I'm still doing that, and then learning. And where you go to learn and be fed spiritually is a major thing too, because you never have it all together, because that's where God and the Holy Spirit comes in there. They help you to get it together. You'll never be able to do it by yourself, because if you could, you wouldn't need them. So just first finding out, that I don't have to be perfect when I come to him. I can come to him a mess, what I am, what I'm still doing, all the above. And then getting to know him, the more I get to know him, the more I pray and learn spiritual things, then the better off I'll be, as far as to get over those things that I'm dealing with, or the things that I can't stop doing, or the things that I feel like have a hold on me. I think that the difference is going through things without God, you just feel hopeless. You feel hopeless. You feel like there's no way out. I can never make it out. I'm the only person dealing with this. Whereas knowing him, he's carrying you. You can rely on the scriptures. The scripture's going to give you strength. Praying to him gives you strength. Spending time with him gives you strength. And you have faith that no matter what it is or what I'm going through, he's going to work it out for my good. It might not feel good, it might not look good, and it might not be good. But ultimately, I know that he has my best interest at heart, and he's not going to let anything harm me.
I mean, you're the first person on these episodes to ever mention this, but something that you just said is just very powerful, and it gave me a aha moment. Is when you said that there are some women who have not tried to have a conversation or tried to have a relationship with God because they feel like they're not perfect. And this is something that I want all you ladies, everybody listening to this, to really listen to me about this. God met me where I was. I was broken. I had been through so much that I couldn't even hardly function. And right where I was standing, that is where God met me. I was not perfect. I couldn't hardly function. I couldn't hardly take care of my kids. I was in a really dark place, one of the darkest places I've ever been before in my whole life. And that is where God met me. God met me in a dark place. Okay. And he has restored my whole life. The woman that's in front of you, the woman that's talking to you now, I am a living and walking testimony of what God can do. Okay. So for you to feel like you have to be perfect and feel like you're not good enough and feel like you have done some things that you're not proud of, you've been in some situationships or whatever it is, God will meet you wherever you are. There is no such thing as you are not good enough, right? There is no such thing. The only thing you have to do is just pray, call on God, and just seek God, lean and press into God, and God, he will be there for you. And it's really important because life without God is not the same as life with God. I can tell you, okay? I'm 48 years old, okay? And I've lived a life where I did not have God there. Like I talked to God when I had situations going on. I read my Bible when I was in the thick of stuff. But when things were going good, I didn't open that Bible. And I would go months, I would go years without just sitting down, having a conversation with God. As long as things were going good for me, there was no conversation. And now I talk to God all through the day. I wake up, I pray, I say good morning. I thank God for all things. Like I listen to my gospel music, I lean and press in, I fast. And my relationship with God is a real relationship. I know God's voice. I don't have to wonder. And my life is totally different. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody's relationships is different. And that's true because that's what Kimberly said. But I'm telling you from experience, life is different when you have a real relationship with God, when you spend time with God. Life is different, ladies. Let me ask you this, Kimberly. If you can go back to your younger years, what are some things you would tell yourself? This is something that I ask everybody that comes on this platform because I think it's important that women who are in the beginning stages, you have some women who are where you were 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that's where they're standing now. And they feel alone. They feel like nobody understands. They don't know how they're going to get through this. They feel judged. There's just so many things, especially when you don't have your mother there the way you would want to. There is nothing like a mother's love. I'm telling you what I know. My grandmother, my aunts, they all pitched in. They helped take care of me. They were good to me. I love them more than anything. But it's not the same as a mother's love. It's just not. So if you could go back to your younger years, just looking at yourself as a little girl, thinking about everything you've ever been through, what are some things you would tell yourself to be able to go through those situations and those seasons?
Mhm. I would tell myself, you are worthy, you are loved. I think those are the main two things because, and as you said, there's nothing like a mother's love.
Mm-hmm.
And you thank God, like you said, I had aunts, I had grandma, I had all that,
Mm-hmm.
everything. I love, like you said, they all pitched in. I thank God for them. I
Mm-hmm.
really do. But it it's something about that, those paternal relationships, if they are not where they need to be, everything else suffers because they're the first people that love us, our parents. You grow up, and my father, I knew my father until I was like 4, and then we moved out of state, and then we lost contact. So I could see him today and not know who he is. So not only was my mom not there, my
Yeah,
father wasn't
it wasn't there.
there, and so those type of not experiencing the parental love, it will make you feel unworthy. It will make you feel unloved. It will make you feel less than.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll cause you to think those things. Like you say, it's not fair, da da da. But
Mm-hmm.
we all have our different journeys and our different paths to follow. We don't know why, but in the end, we're gonna be where God has destined for us to be. And who knows, maybe I wouldn't have had a relationship with God had I not gone through those things, or maybe I wouldn't have learned certain things. So just telling myself you're worthy, you're loved, regardless of who doesn't love you, regardless of who's not there. God is always there. And He said He'll never leave us nor forsake us.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that would have made a huge difference.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I do feel like one of the reasons that I started to lean and press into God more is because of the things I was going through. I had hit rock bottom, so where else was there to go?
Yeah.
Right? I just really have to get serious about this relationship with God. I can't just pray to God when things are going bad and when I have some
Mhm.
situations going on around me. Like I need to worship and praise Him and thank Him
Yeah.
even on my good days. To be honest with you, I don't think that my relationship would be the way it is now if I
Mm.
wouldn't have went through those things. Ladies, so if you're going through some situations and you're in a really dark place, have you thought about maybe this is why you're going through it, because
Yep.
it's time for you to connect with God and pray and
Yep.
fast and lean in more and just have a real relationship, and maybe God is trying to get your attention, because when you are balling out of control and you out there doing whatever you do, living your best life,
Yep.
was God really on your radar?
Yeah.
If you have
Yeah.
all hell breaking loose, sometimes
Yeah.
it could be maybe God is trying to get your attention. What is God trying to tell you? Sometimes you have to be broken until you listen.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So sometimes, ladies, it's the way that you look at a situation, right? Sometimes you have to step outside the box and say, okay,
Hmm.
why is this happening
Yeah.
to me? What is God trying to tell me? What is it that I need to do different? And then you have to go somewhere and sit down long enough so you can get an answer. You may not
Yeah.
get your answer tomorrow or next week or 2 or 3 weeks from now, ladies. It may take time because you have to go through this season, right?
Hmm.
So, what is your favorite scripture, Kimberly?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. And then it's so crazy because I was just thinking about that the other day. Like I literally have so many. But if I had to pick one and I could only pick one, I would have to say Luke 145.
That's my favorite scripture. Oh, if you don't stop.
And what you said made me think of something too. And it helps you to put things in perspective. You know how I was saying how when you don't go through certain things, you may not be on the path that you need to go through. It makes me think of when you read the story of Joseph, it put things into perspective.
Mhm.
His brothers tried to kill him, sold him into slavery. He went through all this stuff, and he was God fearing. He loved God. He served God. He was doing right things, but all these things happened to him. But in the process of those things happening, number one, he still had God's favor. That never left.
Mhm.
And then number two, it developed in him what he needed for certain seasons. And
Mhm.
had he not gone through those seasons, he wouldn't have been where he was supposed to
Prepared.
be to
Mhm.
fulfill his destiny. And that Joseph always like just When you're going through a hard season and you just like, okay, Lord, like how much longer? What in the world? You just need that stability, that peace. I go and I read Joseph because he went through a lot, and I'm sure it was hurtful. I'm sure he was in pain. I'm sure he, a lot of things, especially when you're falsely accused, thrown into jail. Your brothers, your siblings, hate you because they're jealous. All these things, but God was just building him into who He needed him to be to do what He called him to do.
Mhm. So, ladies, if you don't know what Kimberly's talking about, that's a story in the Bible. You can, if you don't have a Bible, some women read the Bible and they don't really understand the interpretations of it. They do have videos that are on YouTube, and if you look up the story of Joseph, it's a very interesting story. He went through a lot, but in the end, he really wound up being a blessing. And that's a really good story if you're going through situations and you don't really understand why. And there's a lot of envy, there's jealousy, and family are the main ones that are hating on you because that's Joseph's story. And that would be a really good story to read about because in the end, he is the blessing, right?
Yeah,
So, can you tell ladies your social handle so that they can find you and the name of your book and how to purchase your book? And you have a podcast as well, right?
I do.
Okay.
Absolutely. So I'm on Facebook as Kimberly Nelms, and I'm on Instagram as All Things Kimberly ORG. That is also my website, which is on the screen, www.allthingskimberly.org. You can access my YouTube channel with my podcast. You can access my book on there. I am a certified wedding and event planner. You can access that information as well if you need someone to help you plan your events. I love doing that. I love organizing and putting things together. Check me out on any one of those social sites. I'm on TikTok as well as Kimberly Speaking, and that's pretty much it.
Oh, wow. Okay, ladies. So there you have it. We have Kimberly Nelms, www.allthingskimberly.org. Thank you so much, Kimberly. Ladies, I really hope you all are blessed by this episode. Again, you are worthy of an amazing life. You should be flourishing within this season, and every gift you have that you are supposed to be operating in within this season, that should be the focus. Distractions are going to come when you're on your purpose. There's going to be a lot of things that are going on. A lot of times when you're out in the world and you just doing a lot of things, life is easy. But once you really start trying to connect with God and live in a certain type of way, distractions are going to come. I wish that I could say that was not the case, but it is. So you have to be strong in prayer and you have to look at situations. And I was talking to a lady the other day, when all hell is breaking loose, then you need to know that this is spiritual. You get mad at the person, you get mad at this and that, but you got to realize that this is spiritual. Okay. And then that's when you got to start praying and fasting. Now, when you start fasting, all hell gonna break loose. But you have to be prepared for that. So again, I am Demira Virgil, and I am your host for Queenduhm Conversations Podcast. We are on all podcast platforms for audio, and if it's video, we are on YouTube, and my website is queenduhm.com. And thank you all, ladies, and I hope you all be blessed. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hello, beautiful people. I'm Demira Virgil, your host at Queenduhm Conversations Podcast, where we empower women one podcast at a time. At Queenduhm, I'm not just a host. I am a creator of many things that reflect the narratives and testimonies of survivors just like you. Visit Queenduhm.com and discover a collection infused with meaning, from candles and aroma melts to prayer books, journals, apparel, and canvas art. Each piece carries a story, a survivor's journey, and a testament to resilience. And a special thanks to our sponsor, The Rose Co. at roseco.store. Experience the best hair where beauty meets luxury. Visit roseco.store today and support a small women-owned business. Your support truly matters, as it empowers young women and contributes to their success. I love to see young women stepping out on faith and making their mark on the world.